join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first item is the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the Town Council meeting of May 7th?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments, changes?
None.
Anybody? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the special call Town Council meeting of May 28th?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any comments or changes?
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Mayor's update. I only have one thing, which is, and I'm gonna save all of my comments for his retirement party here in a couple of weeks. But this is, in fact, sadly for me, probably very happy for him. But this is probably the last town council meeting for Rusty Lamio. Rusty is retiring effective the last day of this month. 22 years and 2 months.
Starting on the 23rd.
Yeah. So, I mean, Rusty, were you our employee number what?
Probably about number 4 or 5.
Oh, number 4 or 5?
There were a few before me.
Not quite as lucrative as being number 4 or 5 in Google, but you know, it's still something, right? Anyway, Rusty, I can't thank you enough for all of your contribution. I'm going to save all of the comments for the event that we're going to have in your behalf here in a few weeks. But nonetheless, at this meeting, I want to make sure that everybody knows that this is Rusty's last meeting, and I appreciate everything you've done. So.
But he's welcome to come back to any meeting every month.
And you
You know?
already told me, no, don't come back. He told me he's gonna watch him on the stream.
Okay.
He'll be the one.
So we'll be up to 2 people watching this. Anyway, thanks. That's my only comments. So citizens' comments. Does anybody have any comments related to something that's on today's agenda? Wendy?
Wendy Kulik, 38 Marsh Edge Lane. I know the single-use plastics ordinance is on the agenda today, and I was wondering whether the town had had any feedback from any of the entities on the island, whether they be concerns or suggestions for how the ordinance might be made more user-friendly, as it were, or any questions about enforcement. And the second question I have is why the development agreement is being amended at this point in time. It wasn't set to expire until 2023. As some of you may be aware, some of the problems that arose as a result of the 2005 development agreement was because that was rushed through, even though the original development agreement wasn't slated to expire until 2008. And I can certainly understand from the developer's perspective what benefit there is. What I'm hoping you can help me with is to understand what benefit there is to the town, because I can see the developer getting something, I don't see the town getting anything. Thank you.
I'll address both of those questions when we get to those agenda items. Any other comments? Sure.
Kelly Thorvaldson, South Carolina Aquarium. Excuse me. I was here for the first reading of the plastics ordinance, and you've heard from me about the negative interactions between wildlife and plastics. So I won't go over that again. I would just like to say that I'm really honored and thrilled to be part of the Plastics Initiative Committee of Kiowa, to work with this group over the last year to try to identify the issues that plastics are causing here on Kiowa. We all know it's a problem, and I'm really appreciative of the council for taking this on. Just to remind everyone that's here, the 3 items that are being considered, single-use plastic bags, styrofoam, and straws, plastic straws, are 3 items that are either not recyclable are very difficult to recycle and do not go into the blue bins, and there are alternatives readily available. So these are the things that are the easiest to delete from our lives and from businesses. I would like to offer everyone here a South Carolina Aquarium reusable bag to shop with. Hopefully you have some already, but you can add this to your collection. And then finally, on behalf of the South Carolina Aquarium, we just want to thank you for your leadership. This is an important step to understanding, or just to really across the state, taking this plastic issue on. As we move forward, if this ban passes, I hope that the PIC committee, as well as council and the community here in Kiowa, will continue to do litter sweeps to aggregate data from those sweeps. It's really, really important to understand what is happening pre-ban and post-bans, so we can know if these bans are actually working. And that is data that's critical to informing not only other communities, but state level bills. So hopefully we'll be able to continue to work with you guys in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments? All right. With that, we'll turn to old business. And the first item we have is to consider approval of Ordinance 2019-2, which is an ordinance to adopt the fiscal year 2019-20 budget for the town of Kiowa. The budget was approved at last month's town council meeting on first reading. You'll recall we had a public hearing is required prior to the Ways and Means Committee, which ultimately was canceled, but the public hearing was held. So it has been approved on first reading. It has had a public hearing. Do I have a motion to approve on second reading?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments?
No, I've looked at it
Okay.
enough.
All right. In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so our budget is approved. Second item we have is also a second reading, which is to consider approval of ordinance 2019-3, which is an ordinance to prohibit the distribution use of certain single-use plastics. I'll address Wendy's question. Let me first, this is, again, was approved last month on first reading. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Just quickly, I think, Wendy, this will address your question. We received really very few, if any, comments at all. But there are a couple changes from the first reading, which I think are really reflective of trying to address the few questions we did have. The primary changes that you will see in the ordinance are some additional language to more clearly clarify what is not included or covered by the ordinance. We had gotten a number of questions, I think mostly related to what I'll call sort of grocery store sorts of items. What happens if a grocery store receives, the one I've used is, gets their eggs in a plastic styrofoam container, and that's where they come. Can they still sell those? The answer is yes. We had a number of those kinds of questions trying to clarify. So there's additional language in here that tries to make it clear, particularly things like plastic cutlery and those sorts of things. So those changes are reflected. The second change is that there is now language which gives a business that has a business reason for wanting to have up to 1 year to comply with some aspect of the ordinance to ask for an exception for that 1 year period. That actually is something which does appear. It did not appear in our first draft. It did appear in probably most of the other in the ordinances that have been adopted by most of the other municipalities in South Carolina. So we have added in language that will allow a business to have up to a year with the approval of the town, and how that will be done relates to the next item on our agenda, which is that we are in the ordinance moving the initial authority for considering those exceptions to our environmental committee. So those are really the two changes. And Jim, you're out. Did I capture all the changes? All right. So with that, are there any? I have a motion and a second. Do I have any other questions, comments? All right, then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and that is approved. Then in new business, I think I just alluded to it, that with putting the responsibility or the initial authority for considering exceptions to that ordinance to the environmental committee, we need to make a change, an addition to the charter for the environmental committee. You have a copy, we have a copy, I assume, up on the screen. And essentially, it's the addition of this item H, which is a subcommittee of the environmental committee of not more than 5 members should be created to hear and decide requests for exemptions to the plastics ordinance as defined in the Town of Kiowa Island's plastic ordinance. And so, do I have a motion to amend the environmental committee charter with the addition of that language?
So moved.
I know I'm turning to you like everybody, I'll turn the other way for a while. Okay, I'll go this way. Do I have a second?
Second.
Stephanie, Jim, do you have anything to add to this? I think it's pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward.
Any comments or
No.
questions?
It's clear.
And it's up to a year, right? It might be 6 months or 3 months or whatever.
It's up to a year. It's up to a year.
The only thing that I would add is that it's based on the ordinance, this goes before the environmental. This goes before the environmental committee, to make a decision if an applicant comes before them for a waiver. But in the plastic ordinance, there is a mechanism that if for some reason, the applicant wants to challenge or doesn't like the decision, they can appeal that to council. So we did set up a mechanism to allow them to be able to appeal a decision made by the environmental committee.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. The next item we have is to consider approval of the First Amendment to the amended and restated development agreement by and between Kiowa Resort Associates and the Town of Kiowa Island. And you have in front of you a copy of the amendment. In essence, what this involves, in the existing development agreement, the pertinent language is that the agreement shall expire on January 1 of 2023. But if Kiowa Partners at the end of at the first day of 2016 demonstrated or demonstrates that they had 250 acres or greater of high ground, that the town and the property owner shall enter into an amendment to this agreement extending the term by 3 years, essentially to January 1 of 2026. My understanding is that sometime after 2016, the developers had indicated to the town that at some point in the future they would want to and intend to ask to have the contract or to have the development agreement extended by the 3 years, that they had and could demonstrate that they had the 250 acres. What this is doing is essentially, at this time, putting in place what by the development agreement the developers have the right to do. You have the attachment that shows delineation as of January 1 of 2016 of the properties that the developer owned. I don't know if this will be fully a full explanation of the question that was asked, but first of all, the way that the development agreement is worded, it isn't worded it's worded as if they have the 250 acres. The contract shall be extended. They've asked to do it at this time. From our perspective, we, I think, also think that we benefit by having some certainty about when the development agreement is going to continue or not continue. I mean, it doesn't change the terms of the agreement. I think it gives us more clarity as to whether come the end of 2023, the development agreement will still be what is controlling or regulating the agreement between the town and the developers. So from I think our perspective, it's essentially carrying out something that the developer has the right in the agreement to do, And we benefit by the clarity of knowing that the intent of the developer is to continue it, so. Let me, so we can open it for discussion, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Let me open it up, questions, comments?
No, my view is that they have the right to do it. They've met the standard clearly. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, the mic's a little
It appears to us that they have the right to do this. They indicated that before. They also have met the standard of more than 250 acres. The fact that the same rules will apply during this next 3-year period, the agreement stays in place, is also a help to the town, so I think it makes sense.
Any other?
No comment, I agree.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. With that, I will turn to the town administrator's report.
Thank you, Mayor. And members of council, I only have just a few things I just wanted to update everyone on. Beach Walker Drive, as you know, that was a project that we took on, and we hired True Luck. They did, I think, a fabulous job. They completed, obviously, within the contract scheduled time. It appears to be working fairly well. We added a right turn lane that allows some, I don't want to call it stacking, but it allows vehicles to be able to pull off to the right to enter into the park. So there's essentially 2 lanes going into the park and, of course, 1 coming out. With the park improvements and with their technology that they have, in order to be able to allow vehicles to come up, if the parking lot is full, they can get their telephone number and send them on to Freshfields. And once the parking becomes available, they'll get an alert, letting them know that their parking space is available, and if they would like to keep that parking space, they have so much time to come back and claim that parking space. The only problem issues that still occur on Beach Walker Drive, and this is just something that we're working through with the park, but not quite sure, how to resolve it. But it's not a terrible issue in terms of the length of time, but the park doesn't open up until 9 o'clock. And so, of course, what happens is that we have visitors that show up at about 8:15, because they want to make sure they get their spot. And so we are seeing cars piled up on the Beach Walker Drive, waiting for the park to open. Of course, once the park opens, and it gives the staff time, has to have time to kind of send the people through. But once that's done, it's my understanding then that the flow is much better. So we have worked with them. They kind of do what's called a soft opening. They don't announce it, but sometimes their staff will open up at 8:30, 8:45, just to start letting traffic or cars come through the park. So overall, I think it's great. The only thing from the town standpoint that we still have left to finish, which has nothing to do with the paving of the actual road, is the landscape area. So we're looking at doing pine needles on the outbound side and on the inbound side going towards the park, and we've just signed off on that, so that project should get going and be completed. And then after that, we can completely close out the Beach Walker Drive road improvement.
Okay.
Any questions?
I just have, since Mark's sitting here, I have a question. Because we're seeing this I see this with the traffic on Beach Walker. The gate that is in place today to allow access back into the partner's property back there, is the expectations that will always be as it's currently designed, or will it ever be a 2-lane gate? Because the issue, here's what's happening, is that road is getting used more, and now as the park has set their turn lanes so people come out and back, is that by definition, everybody going into either the Timbers or the Partners area is at some point then having to drive on the wrong side of the road, because the gate is on the left. And so they're pulling out sometimes in front of cars. They're pulling out in front, cars coming out of the park are coming out, and cars are coming down and going. It's an event, yeah. So it's just something to think of.
I'll take a look at it in terms of how it's living now. I think the expectations are there, at least near term, there would always be a gate to ensure that access is limited back in that area. And if and when new construction starts, that would be the logical construction access way. But I'll
Yeah, I mean, it's not happening in,
How it could maybe work better.
yeah. As you're getting more traffic down there, that's potentially an issue.
Thanks. And this is just an update, just for general information. Beachwalker Park, they are pretty much finished with doing a lot of their work, but they still have some things that they need to tweak and wrap up. Handrails, showers, installations. So as of right now, they're expecting to close just for one day this week. They're looking at a Thursday closing and then reopen on Friday, but right now they're still working through the details of that. But right now it looks like it just might be Thursday for them to install handrails and install the shower things there. I just want to say that I think the last 2 months we had an emergency preparedness exercise. The first one was the hurricane, the second one was, or the first one was earthquake and the second one was hurricane. I think some great things came out of that. We had all the entities involved. They had a representative there. So I think it went well, and I'll, if Councilwoman Mary Ann or Mayor Pro Tem Chris like to comment on that, or even Dan, feel free to do so. But I think it went well. We have to be mindful and be prepared. Hurricane season has officially started June 1st, so knock on wood, we do not have any episodes come this fall. Seabrook Island is having there, as you all know, we participate in disaster awareness with Seabrook this year. They host it, and it is, I believe, next Friday,
June 14th.
June 14th, from 10 to 2. And so I encourage any of you to, if you're interested, please head over there to sit in and listen on some good, you'll receive some great information. And just one update, as council just passed the plastic ordinance, we're just gonna have some just general information that Stephanie's already prepared. It's gonna be on our website. So you're more than welcome to direct anyone to our website for information regarding that, and it's listed under the news. So on our website, we have something that says news, and you can find that information there. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, council members, I'll start with Mary Ann.
Yes, I have a couple of things I'd like to mention. The first is, I think the mayor and council members all get this report from Explore Charleston. And it's a quarterly summary of the activity that Explore Charleston has been involved in promoting and marketing Kiowa. So it's very helpful if you read the information. It's pertinent. I think one thing that's really interesting is the number of passengers in the Charleston airport is up to 986,474 for January, February, and March. Okay. The second thing is about the Main Road Corridor meeting that was held on May 20th. I did attend that meeting, and there was a lot of information that was presented by the county. They had 7 options for addressing Main Road and Route 17, and they asked people to give their comments either in person or online. I do have a copy of the information that was handed out, and on here are all 7 options, so I thought each of the council members would be interested in that. And also at the August meeting, we're going to have a presentation by them, because I talked to some of our residents and they had attended the meeting, but it was so crowded they really couldn't get any information, because the way they had it set up was a little bit difficult to get information.
And that's set for August is when we're gonna have them.
So if you're interested in that, it's a great time to get all the information directly from them.
The one thing, if I can, the one thing we need to, citizens need to be aware of, though, is even though we're gonna have somebody in August to come and talk to us and give us an overview of the main road options, if citizens want to comment, that has to be done, Stephanie, by when?
June 19th.
June 19th, so and I'm told that's a hard cutoff.
That's a hard
because
cutoff.
I've asked whether the town can provide after that comments, and I'm told it's a hard
They will
cutoff.
be
Yes.
opening that up again in February. So we'll go through this period where the comments are closed, and then in February, they're gonna, I guess, have meetings to bring us up to date on what's going on.
Hopefully for fewer than 7 options.
Yes, I hope so.
Okay.
Okay. And the last thing I wanted to mention was a CERT updates. Scott Nelson is heading up the CERT program, replacing Fran Wormuth, who has led the organization for 3 years. He's taken the bull by the horns. They've provided participation in the earthquake and hurricane preparedness workshops that Stephanie set up. They're also going to be participating in the annual Kiowa Seabrook Disaster Awareness Day. One last thing, we do have our 24-hour coverage now for our deputies, and that seems to be working very well. They were employed by Memorial Day. Is that correct? Everything's, so people should rest assured the deputies are available when you need them. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Dan, anything?
Nothing new to report, thank you.
I have nothing.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I do have one more. May I?
It's not
I
down,
yield my
it's not
time
down
to
here
you.
twice, but go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had my notes on
I know
one
what you've
sheet.
got too. I think you do need to handle that one.
Yes, okay. I just wanted to, last year we did this similar update, and I just wanted to, the mayor and I wanted to update you all again this year, and it's in regards to the employee merit performance increase. As you all recall, in the budget that we just adopted, we had an aggregate total of 5% set aside in the budget for merit increases for staff. And every year we go through a performance evaluation, and staff sits with, or the senior staff sit with their employees, and they give a review, and they give a performance, or they give a recommendation in terms of a merit increase percentage. So this year, what we're looking at, once I tallied up all the recommended amounts, we're going to be looking at about a 4.5% merit increase out of the average of the, that's the average of 4.5% out of the 5 that we have. Again, now just because council approved 5 doesn't necessarily mean that staff gotten 5. We have some that may be higher, lower. It's basically kind of a range, but I wanted to let you know that the bucket was 5%, but we're looking at about 4.5% average that we're going to do, and that becomes effective July 1.
Right.
And I believe the town attorney wanted to say something as well.
Mr. Mayor, I have one other very brief legal update that doesn't warrant executive session. As council knows, and as members of the audience know, we have our ongoing action against the town's former auditors. That's nearing the end of the discovery period. So the written discovery, staff's been very helpful collecting the documents. We're in the process of setting depositions. Originally, the mediation was scheduled for July 12th, so that we can make sure that all the depositions are scheduled. They will want to take some of ours as well. We may get a scheduling order pushing that back a while. And when I say a while, maybe a month. As soon as we get that scheduling order, I'll propose and circulate. We can have an idea when it would, number 1, go to mediation, and 2, if not settled at mediation, go to trial. But that is ongoing, and we've gotten some good discovery responses, and I'll share the review of that as we get into the deposition. So that should be helpful.
Do we have from them now a full list of everybody they want to depose from the town?
We do, and I'll circulate that, and you are on it. So we'll talk about it before that.
Okay. Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Citizens' comments.
Wendy Kulik, 38 Marsh Edge Lane. I assume that Stephanie will do her usual bang-up job of notifying people about this wonderful single-use plastics ordinance. I imagine the big challenge is not residents and it's not the business entities on Kiowa. It's renters and rental agencies and just general visitors. So I think the more that that word can get out, hopefully it will be that much easier for people who aren't accustomed to do it. I know at Mount Zion, we've had 3 bins in the cafeteria for years. When the kids clean up, there's stuff that goes to their compost heap that they maintain, stuff that goes to the landfill, and stuff that goes to recycling. And the school has actually changed from the styrofoam trays that they were using and used recyclable trays now, so that's even better. I was kind of surprised on May 18th when Hands Across the Sand was held for its 10th year on the importance of preventing offshore drilling and seismic testing, that there was nobody there from the town, especially, at least I didn't see anybody. Maybe somebody was there and I missed it, but I didn't see anybody there from the town. And especially since the town is participating in the lawsuit to try to prevent it, I think it would have been good to have support from the town there. It was an incredible day. Somebody did a wonderful job of arranging good weather, and our Congressman, Joe Cunningham, was there and spoke. The mayor of Folly Beach spoke. There were people from Isle of Palms there, people from Beaufort, and I just think in the future, if there's anything, it would be very positive for the town to send representation. Thank you.
All right. I do want to comment on the communication on the plastics. I know Stephanie and I discussed this a few minutes ago. Stephanie Braswell and Jim, probably not what I'm about to say, but the communication on the plastics obviously is going to be significant. So I think what we talked about doing, there's a couple different audiences. We obviously need to first and foremost make sure that all the commercial entities in the town have the opportunity to know exactly what's involved, a forum to answer their questions before the effective date. So we'll work on that. We need to make sure that our residents, our property owners, that there's an approach in place to deal with visitors. We also have to look at all of our markings, since some part of this ordinance deals with the use of these products on the beach. What signage or markings need to occur to make sure people going to the beach know, the park, and so on. And so what I suggested, which is the part they haven't heard, is that if they could at the July council meeting, if they would just do for us a quick summary of what the overall communication plan is going to be, so they can work on that the next couple of weeks, and then give you all an update in July as to what the approach is going to be. So we'll do that here in this meeting. Okay, Mark.
Wendy Kulik, 38 Marsh Edge Lane. This is Groundhog Day. Mark Primar, I'm here representing Kiowa Partners, and I just wanted to thank council for extending the term of the development agreement. Kiowa's had the luxury, I think, of 2 lines of development agreements that started in 1994 and one later of Kiowa Island Golf Resort and Kiowa Partners. I think the community has benefited by clarity on certain standards that both parties can work toward. And I think if we looked at a history of that activity during those periods with both entities, that Kiowa has benefited enormously, especially when we compare it to many of our competitor island communities and see how they've aged. I think our community has aged well, largely because of this sense of common agreement on certain standards. Wendy, if I could address one question you have of why now versus some other time. The hidden secret is it takes an enormous period of time to evolve an idea and a vision for a project. I mean, Ocean Park, I probably spent 12 years as part of a team that evolved on that. If you don't have enough time to evolve ideas, that means you put pressure on doing them too quickly. And there'll be a rush toward development as opposed to a slow, steady pace. So I think it's working really well by both parties. We're both held accountable for performance, and I just wanted to thank you.
To add a couple things on this, one of the things that we are in the process of doing, I know that and I don't expect our residents to be experts in development agreements, but I think, there is, as the island gets closer and closer to build out, understandably, everybody's more concerned and maybe more focused on what the remaining properties are and how they're being developed. And there's, I think, a lot of, lack of knowledge of how the whole development and planning process works. So Stephanie Braswell has been working with John Taylor and others we're gonna create our intent is by the fall, or late summer would even be better, by the fall, that we're gonna develop a communication, a really detailed communication piece for the residents and property owners that will really help them sort of understand where we are at with respect to development. We're gonna talk about, what's left, what properties are out there that haven't been developed, who owns them, who has the rights to them. We're gonna give them a little bit better understanding of the 2 development agreements that we have with the resorts and with the Kiowa partners, that they better understand the planning process. Because I think there is, as we get to these last properties, some confusion as to, or lack of understanding of how this process works. I think people need to recognize too that the development agreement, if the development agreement didn't exist, Kiowa Partners still has the right to develop the properties that they own. And so if and what the development agreement does is at least put some known, understood restrictions and sort of playing rules around how that's going to be done. So that's something that's important to us. If the development agreement didn't exist, those properties would still be developed, but we would be sitting here not necessarily knowing under what rules and regulations would be affecting that. So I think that will help people too. Anybody have any other comments? Any other citizens' comments? All right, we have no executive session, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Right.